So Bros HQ in Nashville, Tennessee to wherever you're cheering on your Tennessee Titans. The So Bros Network presents the unofficial Titans podcast.
Welcome back for another episode of the unofficial Titans podcast right here on So Bros Network, powered by Memo's Mexican Kitchen out in Mount Juliet, Tennessee. Mine's right, ass is tight as we get you ready for Titans Seahawks. A week of joint practice is in the books. We got a game to play tomorrow night. It's the second game of the preseason. The Titans will look to go 2-0, and we're going to talk about it, folks. I am your host for the unofficial Titans podcast, the EIC at SoBrosNetwork.com, Big Natural Stoney Keeley. You can follow me on Twitter at Stoney Keeley, collectively at SoBros Network, joined, as usual, by Cinderella Man, One Take O, coming to us from the dad zone, outspoken Owen Reed. Owen, how you doing on this fine Friday, my friend?
Hey, everybody. Hey, Stoney. And I want to give a special shout-out to Mark Wahlberg for no reason at all. How are you doing today, buddy?
Oh, no. We can't. I'm doing well. We can't let that just float out into the ether for no reason, because I was going to bring it up anyway. I was going to ask you what your favorite Mark Wahlberg movie is. I put out a call for listener questions, and I'm logging into Twitter to see if we've got any new ones since I first put out the call. And I log into Twitter and I just see Brandon, our resident film critic at SoBros Network, just tweet out a picture of Mark Wahlberg, and the caption just says useless actor. And I told you, I'm like, man, you can't make a string of bad movies in front of Brandon Vick, or else he's going to hold a grudge. I think it stems from Mark Wahlberg getting the Best Supporting Actor nom for The Departed and not Jack Nicholson. Nicholson is Brandon's favorite actor. I think he's held a personal vendetta against Mark Wahlberg for that reason, but I just thought it was funny. I'm like trying to catch my Titans questions. I'm like, Brandon just wants people to know on this fine Friday morning that Mark Wahlberg is practically a piece of shit. But I'll say this, to Brandon's point, I do think that Mark Wahlberg, I think he's made a really, really high volume of really shitty movies in recent years. I can't remember. We did this exercise before because hating on Mark Wahlberg is a popular pastime when we have nothing else to talk about. But I think it's been since like 2014 since we've seen a good Mark Wahlberg movie. So you're wishing him well. I take it you're a fan?
Oh, you take the good, you take the bad.
That's how it goes. That's how it goes sometimes. So, just Mark Wahlberg catching strays on this random Tennessee Titans podcast for no reason from a film critic. Whatever we're doing here, it's off to a great start. We had some joint practices this week, Owen. I want to get your general takeaways from it. Like, how do you feel? What do you like the vibes for the joint practices? Kind of feels like it was split between the Seahawks and Titans this week. Probably a pretty good week of practice, but there's some clips floating out there of these Seahawks wide receivers toasting some of the Titans defensive backs, including Jake Bobo, who ran a 4.9940 at the combine, high pointing and mossing Roger McCreary. I'm not saying it's time to sound the alarm here, but was there any point this week that you're seeing these clips and thinking, oh, buddy, maybe these defensive backs have more work to do than we think?
I'm not sure. I feel like just in general, from what we got from this Seahawks test in the offseason, there was a lot of good and a lot of bad. I'll start off with the bad. I feel like that final run through when like the ones are going against the ones and Levis ends up throwing the pick on the first play was really bad.
Yeah.
Just because that's the last time, maybe up until week one when you play against Chicago, that you're going to get ones-on-ones, and you really wanted to see at least a couple more plays. You wanted to see something of what you had, and it just kind of all went up in smoke really quick.
Well,
but you also Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I didn't want to interrupt your train of thought there. You got the good to get to.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, Jeffrey Simmons absolutely demolished somebody yesterday.
That's what I was going to bring up.
I don't know if you got to see that, but yeah. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's just training camp. You take it with a grain of salt, to quote Sean Atkins. But, you know, you could be encouraged or discouraged whichever way you want to see it.
So it's interesting. I'm going to quote our buddy Easton Freeze of the Hot Read podcast and Broadway Sports. He tweeted yesterday, Roger McCreary said the Titans coaching staff implemented the same rule for joint practices that New England did this week. If you're a starter and you fight, you play the full preseason game. And if you're a backup and you fight, you don't see the field. What do you think about the limitations there to try and keep some of the chippiness in check a little bit? Because from the sounds of things, it did get pretty chippy at times this week, but cooler heads prevail. No major incidents. I mean, you tip your cap to the coaching staff for this one?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of gotten out of hand lately. What was it, the Giants and Lions?
Yeah.
Was that the big clip that came out where the assistant gets thrown to the ground? Like, that kind of stuff's unnecessary, and it definitely causes unwanted injury. But you also kind of like a little bit of chippiness, or at least I do, especially when it's two new teams. I guess, you know, I don't want to see any of our starters having to play all 4 quarters in the preseason, and I don't want to see anybody go down that doesn't need to go down and lose playing time. So, I mean, I guess overall success.
I'm with you, man. I think that's a good rule to implement because, you know, these starters don't want to be playing in these preseason games. The guys that are veterans that have, you know, been in the league for a while, they don't want to play in these games. But likewise, the backups are the ones that need the preseason to put tape out there to land on a roster somewhere. So they're the ones wanting to play. I think it's a pretty smart rule. And I think it's pretty smart of Brian Callahan and company to borrow a page out of the New England playbook there. I don't know if this is just one of those things where a lot of camps do this and New England's the only one that came out and said the rule. So, you know, you kind of have to be a little careful there when crediting for an idea. You know, it's kind of like Red Solo Cup, that song. A lot of country musicians played it in bars, but nobody took it and recorded it until Toby Keith did. And so now, you know, it's like, well, Toby Keith did it. He gets the credit for it, but that song was floating around the bar scene for quite some time. Same deal with fighting in joint practices. I want to give our buddy Sam Phelan at A to Z Sports a shout out. He reported Titans Quandre Diggs and Jamal Adams are basically living on the Seahawks sideline, talking smack to their former team. This feels kind of weird to me, and I don't mean it's weird to do this because you stick up for your teammates, and I don't mind the shit talking or anything like that, but these guys just came from the Seahawks last year. They know a lot of these guys. I'm trying to get into a headspace where, like, my teammates are just suddenly the target of my malice and my shit talking and my aggression and all that. I don't know that I could do that. What do you think about the former Seahawks safeties flipping that switch and just turning it on their former team?
Yeah, man, that's some crazy bad blood you usually don't see. I mean, they can be mad at a lot of people. You know, I'm sure you could blame ownership or coaching, but it's kind of weird to see it taken out on former teammates. You don't usually see that.
Well, there are some rumors out there. I don't know specifically about Quandre Diggs, but there are some rumors out there that Jamal Adams was not necessarily well liked in the Seahawks locker room. So maybe there are some tensions with his teammates, but I don't know, some fun, friendly competition out there too. Our buddy JT Runke, also of the Hot Read podcast and Broadway Sports. Shout out to JT, by the way. If y'all aren't following JT at JT_Runke, RUHNKE, he's been crushing it this week with reports and camp videos. Dude, he posted the clip of Jake Bobo mossing Roger McCreary. It's got like 250,000 views on Twitter right now. So JT's putting in the work. Tweeted, Seahawks Devin Witherspoon just jumped the route, picked off Will Levis. Witherspoon runs the ball to Jamal Adams, who had once again been chirping all day. 2 plays later, Chance Campbell intercepts Sam Howell. So in a nutshell, man, you've got the chippiness, you've got the trash talk, you've got a little bit of tit for tat between going interception for interception. It sounds like these two teams were pretty evenly matched all week. I know some people are kind of, got the gun in their mouth staring down the barrel because the Titans didn't dominate practice this week, but it's the NFL, brother. This shit's going to happen. To me, I read stuff like JT's tweet and the reporting that's coming out this week, and it sounds to me like this was probably a pretty healthy week in terms of growth for the Titans. So to put a bow on it, how are you feeling now that the joint practices are done? Competitive, fiery. Maybe you didn't see the Titans dominate the way you wanted to see, but it sounds like potential for growth at the very least comes out of these joint practices. How are you feeling about this team as it heads into a game tomorrow night, Owen?
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on the point that it's just, you're going against another top NFL. I don't know about top, but you're going against another full NFL team.
I think the Seahawks are going to be pretty good.
Yeah, I don't think you look to assert dominance in training camp. They don't hand out trophies for that shit.
Fair enough.
So anybody that's panicking about it either which way or overly celebrating anything kind of seems a little silly.
Let's keep it even keel. Let's keep things even keel at this point in the summer. So before we preview tomorrow night's game, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor for this show, Memo's Mexican Kitchen out in Mount Juliet, Tennessee. In my opinion, the best Mexican food in the area. Might head out there tonight. Shit, I don't know what's going on. I'm kind of craving some of that quesadilla again. But they're just a mile north of I-40 off the Mount Juliet exit. It is a short drive, worth the trip out there for a fine quality Mexican cuisine. You guys have been going out there. I heard from Katie at Memos not too long ago, and she told me that people have come in saying they heard about them on Sobros Network or they watched the Hot Read podcast live from Memos a few weeks ago. So keep at it, guys. I'm happy that you're giving them a shot. And I hope that you enjoy the experience as much as I do every time I go in there. Get you a margarita. If you're like me, completely insane, drinking gin at the Mexican restaurant, they have fantastic seasonal gin and tonics. Check out the drink menu there. Get you a fine dinner. And it's a great place to celebrate life and wave at the haters for a little bit on a Friday night if you're partaking in that Gin Friday as well. memosmexicankitchen.com. You can check out the menu there. Follow them on Instagram at Memos Mexican Kitchen as well. Give them a shot sometime. The next time you're out in Mount Juliet, let them know Stoney. Let them know the Sobros Network sent you. And just have you a ball. Memos Mexican Kitchen, baby. All right, let's talk about this game tomorrow night against the Seahawks, Owen. Now that the game against the 49ers is behind us, I want to start with the offensive line and get your impressions because I thought J.C. Latham was pretty solid within the context of it being his very first NFL action. I don't think he's going to go out there and win an all-pro vote playing the way that he did on Saturday, but I think it was more hopeful than any left tackle we've seen in the last couple of years for this team. He had his ups and downs, specifically in pass pro. I felt like he was driven back a couple of times, but he countered nicely and had some good reps showing strength, his outside hand. I swear, like, combo blocking with Peter Skoronski, like going in on a guy's side, I think he probably caused some internal bleeding with those hands. Like, we got to check on homeboy's kidneys before he can keep playing. But by and large, I thought it was a net positive for J.C. Latham. Peter Skoronski, to me, was the best offensive lineman out there on Saturday night. I mean, his anchor, he looked like he just decided, I'm not going to take another step back, and instead, I'm going to push you back. And that's pretty good shit to see from him. Lloyd Cushenberry, I thought was a net positive as well. Pretty solid stuff. It looked like there were a couple of times he had given up a rush, but I think on one instance, I feel like Dylan Radins passed off his assignment without really communicating it. It looked like Cushenberry wasn't ready for the guy, so I'm willing to give him a pass on that. Dylan Radins, I thought, was a little shaky. At times it looked like he was maybe see, I struggled with this on Football and Other F Words. I don't want to flat out say he missed an assignment because I don't have the playbook, but it just looked like he was maybe in a position that he wasn't supposed to be in. And that was a little concerning for me, but I still think that he was pretty good on Saturday night. And then Nicholas Petit-Frere, man, I've been kind of down on him all summer, but I thought he was really good with his hands. I thought he was wrangling guys out there, the athleticism to mirror, to move with guys, was really impressed. He was one of my risers of the game as well. All in all, I think this offensive line looked a lot more promising than it did in 2023. Will Levis had time to complete passes, to go through his reads, his progressions, and it was awesome, man. I was pretty stoked watching that offensive line on Saturday night. But what do you want to see? It doesn't sound like the starters are going to play a lot this weekend, but give me your thoughts on how you felt the offensive line did on Saturday night and what you're looking to see from them on last Saturday to this Saturday, what you're looking to see from them.
Yeah, I think two of the big takeaways from last Saturday's game was that there was no pre-snap penalties and no sacks given up. So, take the performance for what it was, but those are two things that you can definitely be encouraged on.
Sure.
Like you said, there's not going to be a lot of play for them, I think, against Seattle. So I don't know really what the standard is other than maintaining that as well. Just no big mistakes and stay healthy.
Yeah, I think for me, the issue is consistency. Like, okay, let's see you at least establish a baseline and go out there and do what you did last week and maybe sprinkle in a few more plays. Again, I don't know that the starters are going to play at all. I know people are kind of running with Tyke Tolbert's quote this week about the starters not playing. But to my knowledge, I haven't seen Brian Callahan confirm that just yet. Though I know Malik Willis is starting. So you know what? Yeah, I don't think the offensive line is going to play too much. Maybe Latham gets some run. Maybe NPF gets some run. Latham being a rookie and NPF being, just getting back into football action. I think if that's the case, you just want to see a little more consistency out of the unit. But I think this weekend kind of sounds like it's going to be more about filling out depth. And there were a couple of guys, I don't know how deeply you watched the offensive line, but I thought Cole Spencer playing right guard had a really good game. Undrafted free agent, rookie out of Texas Tech. He was well vetted by Bill Callahan, seemed like one of his boys that they went out and got. I thought he played with great leverage, got a little lower in his stance than I saw on tape at Texas Tech. Athletic profile is off the charts. It was, for me, a question of, hitting guys, driving them back sort of thing. And I think he did that in the first preseason game. I thought his hat placement was great. He played with good leverage, climbing to the second level, hitting guys. There was a lot to be impressed with by Cole Spencer. And you have to think that between injuries, contract situations, it's nice to have a developmental prospect in the pipeline if there comes a day when you need somebody to go in there and play. And I think getting Cole Spencer reps is going to serve this offensive line well, whether it's this season or beyond. Was there anybody else along the offensive line that you would want to mention that we could talk about real quick that caught your eye on Saturday that you kind of want to see step up against the Seahawks?
I don't know. I think I'm with you that I want to see J.C. Latham out there at least for a little bit. There were talks that, this past week had been a little bit of a struggle for him.
Yeah.
With Seattle. So that's definitely a position that you're super worried about. I mean, that's your first round pick. Mm-hmm. And I think that's somebody that could benefit from some more reps.
Yeah, some more reps against a really good defensive front, man. I don't know if people realize, Leonard Williams is no joke. I can't remember. Byron Murphy, the guy they drafted from Texas, Tavondre Sweat's teammate, he's a really good defensive lineman. They've got some pass rushers, Boye Mafe. This would be probably good learning reps for J.C. Latham if he could get out there and at least for a couple of plays. The wide receiver position, I think there was one big surprise from the game against the 49ers, and that was Jaquan Jackson being relegated to like the third team, the Malik Willis unit. Him being a draft pick, the way that they've talked about him this offseason, I thought they were pretty high on him. I thought that he would get some run with the Mason Rudolph unit. That wasn't the case. And running with the Malik Willis unit, I thought it was interesting. I counted at least 3 times that I saw Jaquan Jackson get open and Malik Willis just couldn't find him. So are you concerned at all about the development of Jaquan Jackson? And do you think we can get a better look at him if they kind of elevate him and give him some run with Mason Rudolph?
Yeah, I mean, we got a loaded wide receiver room for the first time in forever. So it's kind of understandable to, maybe not see him as much as you'd like, but also this is kind of the game that you do move stuff around, that there should be moving parts. You imagine that New Orleans is going to be the trial run through of the ones for at least the first half. So yeah, hopefully this does bring, some opportunity to show that what he can do.
It sounds an awful lot like Brian Callahan intends on keeping 6 wide receivers on this team. So you figure like Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, Tyler Boyd, and Traylon Burks are all virtual locks to make this roster. I'm pretty certain Nick Westbrook-Akine is going to land on this final roster, and it looks like he had a good week as well. There's some clips out there of him breaking people's ankles. I'm like, damn, I didn't know he had that in him. But if it comes down to those 5 and one spot left over, and you are looking at Jaquan Jackson, Kearis Jackson, who had an active game against the 49ers, Mason Kinsey, and Kyle Phillips, of those 4 guys, who do you think would be the 6th man to stick on the roster?
Man, I don't know. That's a very loaded question.
They all showed signs of life against the 49ers. And that's the interesting thing.
Sure.
I think it's a battle.
Yeah, I don't know. I absolutely would agree that it's a battle and it's still up in the air. I guess Seattle would be a good time, a good proving ground.
Yeah, I think I'm still leaning Jaquan Jackson because he's the draft pick and because they are so high on him. And I don't know, man. I feel like we're being gaslit into another summer of Mason Kinsey. And like we've seen this story before with him. But I don't know, man.
Yes, we have.
I mean, maybe this is finally the year that he puts it all together and he lands on this roster. But I think it's going to be interesting to see. And I think Bryce Oliver is another name to watch in that group as well, the undrafted kid out of Youngstown State. He's had a pretty solid training camp so far, according to the reporters, and had a nice game against the 49ers. I don't know. I tend to think he's going to be a practice squad guy, though. So before we get into our listener questions this week, I do want to ask your thoughts on Malik Willis being named the starter for this Seahawks game. And the team not really – I don't think they're going to play Mason Rudolph at all. I think this is going to be Malik Willis's game to go out there and run. What do you make of that decision?
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't think that there's QB2 competition. And this might just be more – I think this might just be more about him getting reps because there's always that potential for, a QB3 to go in, especially lately. Teams have been keeping 3 quarterbacks on the roster. We just saw J.J. McCarthy go down for the year.
Yeah.
So I think it's more so just having a guy on there that isn't just clueless and lost in the shuffle. Having 3 guys that are comfortable with your playbook and 3 options.
I'm with you on that. I think Malik has he's shown improvement this summer. And I think this is a chance for him to go out there and say, I'm deserving of a spot on this 53-man roster. And I don't think he's going to unseat Mason Rudolph. But to your point, if you start looking through the way Will Levis plays the game, I mean, just last week, like he took a shot in the kidneys for no reason in a preseason game. You think about that playing style, it's conducive to injuries. Like he can get himself hurt. And if that's the case, then you're relying on Mason Rudolph and you got nobody behind him. So I'm starting to come around on this idea that this team might just keep 3 quarterbacks. And that's where you start getting into the roster math of, okay, do you want a 7th wide receiver? Do you want a 4th tight end, a 10th offensive lineman, or do you want a 3rd quarterback? So Malik may be like the 53rd spot on the 53-man roster, but I think he's going to make a compelling case, or he has the chance to make a compelling case against the Seahawks tomorrow night. I'll be fascinated to see how he does. Let's get to our listener questions. Thank you guys for writing the show for us this morning, because I had nothing. The last couple of days have just been a complete blur. I'm not even up to date on all my Titans news just yet, to be fully transparent. So we're just winging it today. That's what we do. But I put out a call on Twitter for questions that you guys have for me and Owen, and let's get to them. Let's start with Daniel, who asks, what are your current expectations for the Titans offense and defense as units? I would say I think this team is going to run the ball a little bit more as the offensive linemen develop in pass pro, and as the quarterback and wide receivers build chemistry. It's going to take some time for things to come together, but I think people are sleeping on how well equipped the Titans are to run some 12 personnel stuff with 2 tight ends out there, Wiley and Chig, with 2 running backs like Tyjae Spears and Tony Pollard in the backfield, and a gap scheme that is conducive to big runs. We saw a couple of big runs from the first team against the 49ers. I think that is going to be the bread and butter of the Titans offense early on in the season. It might frustrate fans to see smash mouth football again, so to speak, but I think that's going to be the ingredient to success early if this team's going to have it as the passing game develops. But I think by season's end, we'll see a unit gel together and it become the offense that we're envisioning right now. Those are my expectations for offense. Defense, I think it's going to be an aggressive unit. I think this is going to be the area where the Titans are probably most likely to see success early. I think it's not going to surprise me if the first quarter of this season, this is a run the ball, play defense kind of team as it develops and as it grows. They've got good man corners, they've got aggressive linebackers, and they should have some pieces up front that can disrupt, create interior pressure, blitz the quarterback, have him second guessing, not knowing where the pressure's coming from, and guys in the back end that can cover man. So I think that's kind of the makeup of this defense. I expect tentative is not the word, conservative is not necessarily the word either, but I think there will be I think they'll be more effective running and playing defense than people are giving them credit for, and quite frankly, than they probably want to see from the jump. But I'll flip this question to you, Owen. Your expectations for the offense and defense as units.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to, fill out some expectations when there's just major overhaul on both sides of the ball. So I guess the one thing that you want to see is just, like you said, kind of them finding that consistency and finding their comfortability and finding what works for them. So I think just realistic progression throughout the season is kind of my expectation for them.
Drew Cephas asks, how much will the Titans run 4 wide receiver or 5 wide receiver sets? In 4 wide receiver sets, is the 4th receiver also a slot receiver, or are there 2 X's, 2 Z's, or is the 4th receiver its own position? As a Titans fan, I have seen so little 4 and 5 wide, I don't even know how to conceptualize it. Yeah, Drew Cephas, I don't blame you. Yeah, it's tricky. I think from an alignment standpoint, I think it's going to vary. I think this is going to be a pretty multiple offense. I think you're going to see, some 2x2, some trips, some little bit of everything. And from a personnel standpoint, I don't know how likely we are to see 4 wide receivers literally out there. And what I mean by that is like Hopkins, Ridley, Boyd, and Burks are all going to be on the field at the same time. I think there's probably a good chance that you're going to see a lot of Ridley, Hopkins, Boyd, and then either Tony Pollard or Tyjae Spears or Chigakonkwo out there. 5 wide receiver sets is where I think you're more likely to see Treylon Burks come into play, maybe the occasional Nick Westbrook-Akine sighting, maybe even some nifty stuff with Jaquan Jackson if he makes the roster. But I just think the running backs and the tight ends are going to be more involved in the passing game than people are thinking right now. I don't think personally my advice to Titans fans would be, don't get hung up on the idea that Hopkins, Ridley, Burks, and Boyd are going to be your 4 wide receivers that are out there all the time. Owen, you got any thoughts on this question about the 4 and 5 wide receiver sets?
No, I mean, I think you said it very well when you said that they were very intentional with having Pollard and Spears, as 2 guys that you definitely want involved in the passing game. So I don't know if it's as much just going to be the air raid of, a 4 wide receiver set as much as, having your running backs and tight end involved in the passing game. But, as a Titans fan, like it was said in the question, it'll just be nice to see a passing-based offense for the first time in a while.
Yeah, I mean, from like personnel and alignment standpoint, I thought Tim Kelly actually did some pretty creative things with this team last year. I know it didn't always connect, and people are not don't praise Tim Kelly quite often anymore. But I actually thought from a formation standpoint, he did some pretty creative, interesting stuff there. Just kind of hamstrung by the offensive line and constantly needing to put 2 tight ends and just tack them on next to the tackles to help block. You hope you don't have to see too much of that this year, and that we will kind of see things spread out a little more. But well said, Owen. Let's move on to Kenneth's question. He has one for me. Am I crazy, or is 3rd down for this team going to be a real problem again? No pass rush except blitzing and poor coverage linebackers. I don't have the stats in front of me, but I felt like they did fairly well on 3rd down against the 49ers after the second team came in. The weakness is still, to Kenneth's point, I feel like the weakness is still over the middle against the linebackers in coverage, and we saw the 49ers pick up some major chunk plays doing that on Saturday night. But I don't know. I still think that you have a couple of linebackers slotted into starting roles that are not known for their coverage skills, and behind them you have a bunch of guys that are having to grow into roles as linebackers. And I personally don't think that's a great recipe for developing good coverage linebackers. So I can see where Kenneth is coming from in the concern for that. I do think 3rd down could be an issue if teams wisen up to this and realize this is an area of the defense that they can exploit. I do think it could bring trouble for 3rd down. But at the same time, this aggressive style, I think the pass rush is going to come from positions outside of the defensive line and the edge rushers. And I know Kenneth acknowledges that, no pass rush except blitzing. But the thing is, I think blitzing on 3rd down can be effective with the right pieces in place. And I am confident in the pieces that the Titans have to blitz. It's just a matter of how many times can you get away with it? Like if opposing offensive coordinators pick up on those tendencies, maybe they start designing things to counter for it. And if they know we can just drop a receiver 5 yards down the field right behind Jack Gibbons, we're going to take that all day. That's where you get into trouble. But I think in theory, I like the idea of these Titans blitzers getting home and creating that pass rush. This question for you, Owen: what is the one must-have thing you want in the new stadium? For me, it's shorter concession lines. What do you think the Titans need to improve upon for their new stadium opening up here in a few years?
Man, I'm hoping concession prices are better. I mean, it's insane to go out to a public sporting event and being like, man, I'm going to have to spend like $40-50 on beer all the time. prices are always outrageous. I think it's admirable for places like Mercedes-Benz Stadium that keep them so relatively cheap when they're already making a big old profit off of tickets and everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to see affordable concessions.
There you go. We've got a few from our buddy Jamal here. Let's get through these. Have you smelled Will's perfume? Did you get a bottle of that Parfum de Mayonnaise?
Yeah, so finally I tried the first 2 days with no luck. It instantly sold out in a minute, and been setting the alarm for 9 a.m. Central Standard Time every day since, and finally got one yesterday, so I'll be waiting.
Are you still crying at night now that Derrick Henry is a Baltimore Raven?
I mean, how many tears can you cry? Eventually, you have to just pick yourself up and move on. It sucks, and it's really going to suck to see him like week one out there in the full pads and jersey, and but eventually you do. Life goes on.
We have 0 regular season wins since firing Vrabel. Time to admit it was a mistake.
Is that a question?
That is a question.
Yeah, we've also had 0 losses.
We're undefeated.
So, probably the best choice we've ever made for our franchise.
I haven't heard a good nickname for our running back duo. Does that mean they'll stink?
Yeah, success only comes from good nicknames. Like, how do you feel about that, Big Natural?
Well, I think we should cut him personally. No, I've got a nickname for him. Let's call him Fire and Ice, because Tyjae Spears is ice cold with the jump cut out in the open field, and Tony Pollard's family cooks barbecue over an open fire in Memphis.
Okay.
Fire and Ice, baby.
Now,
Daniel asks, how are we feeling now? Oh, well, this is relevant. How are we feeling now about Jaquan Jackson? I know everyone could hear a pin drop when that was the name over Malik Washington. Has anything changed? Has the vision become more clear? Thanks. Daniel, I feel like I'm always going to look at this pick and compare it to Malik Washington. And I don't know how much digging you guys have done on Miami Dolphins training camp, but apparently Malik Washington has made some pretty incredible catches out there and is looking pretty good. And he's in a situation where he can thrive behind Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. He is depth in that receiving core. I liked him a lot. I said, people keep asking me who this year's Puka Nacua is. And I try to tell them, I'm not confident that there is a Puka Nacua, but the closest I got was with Malik Washington. And I know some teams were kind of afraid of the injury history, but man, he is a tough, hard runner, dynamic wide receiver that you can move all around the formation. I would have been doing cartwheels had they drafted him. And listen, to be fair to Jaquan Jackson, I liked him too. I thought he was a good wide receiver. Just not the guy I would have gone with in that spot. And now, after generating a bit of buzz early on in mini camps, it sounds like the buzz has kind of cooled off a little bit. And then he's running with the threes, the third team. He can't pass Kearis Jackson. He can't pass Mason Kinsey in the pecking order. And to me, that feels like a little bit of a red flag. So I was never really high on the drafting to begin with. I'm still not high on it in that sense. I don't think things have changed, but I do think the vision has become a little more clear because it's obvious now that they kind of want to use him in that gadgety kind of role, and they want to use him as the punt returner on special teams as well. Owen, anything that you want to say about Jaquan Jackson that we haven't already covered on this episode?
No, I mean, I think we put a lot of it out there. I don't know. There's still time, but the clock's ticking. So if he's got something, he needs to throw it out there.
Daniel adds another one. And another, if I may. We haven't heard too much about Cedric Gray, and I thought he was tracking to be back this week for practice in the game. Any indications he's a go for Saturday, and should we be worried? Thanks. I am going to have to look that up because I haven't seen anything on Cedric Gray, but I was pretty out of commission yesterday. So I don't know. I don't know how serious the injury was. It was a shoulder issue, and sounds like it was not season threatening or anything like that. But damn, I don't know, Daniel. I'm efforting and I can't find anything. Let me just talk about Cedric Gray for a minute. Surprised to see him so far on the depth chart. Surprised to see him struggling the way that he is. From people that have been out in camp, they've said that he kind of looks lost. It very much looks like a guy, like a deer learning to run for the first time or something like that. I still think he's uber talented. I'm excited to watch him develop. He's a feisty guy. He's scrappy. I think he's kind of tailor-made. If you're looking at the mold of what Denard Wilson wants in a linebacker, I think he's similar to James Williams, probably a little twitchier, probably a little bit stockier. I think he's going to be okay. I think the rude awakening on Cedric Gray is that we probably just need to be a little more patient than we were, because I know like Zach and I were both on this bandwagon early, like just throw him in there, trial by fire, get it over with, let him work through the lumps. But it sounds like he's not even in a position to really get to that. So we just need to be a little bit patient. I still think this is going to be a solid player for the Titans on down the road, super talented. Owen, your concern level with Cedric Gray right now?
Yeah, I feel like the only news we've heard about Cedric Gray this past week is no news, and I don't think that's great for somebody that everyone saw as an immediate impact. Like you said, I guess, you just relegate it to having patience.
Yeah, so the last update I see is from Teron Davenport, who said no sign of Cedric Gray as the Titans start the team stretch. So it doesn't sound like, I don't think he was out there practicing. Yeah, and Sam Phelan corroborated that. He's reporting the same thing. I'm guessing based on that bit of information, we're probably not going to see him tomorrow night. That would be my guess. Let's wrap up our listener questions. And again, thank you guys for writing our show for us. This is from Zach, who asked, this is a fitting way to end the show. Will the world explode when two wide receivers and both running backs all have 1,000 yards each? How about that, Owen? Is the world going to end when the Titans offense has 4 1,000-yard producers?
Yeah, but the good news is it won't happen this season, so we've got plenty of time left on Earth.
Enjoy what you got. Hey, listen, I went out on a limb. I've already put it out there. I don't know if I've officially declared it. I think the way I framed it is I won't be surprised if, but I really won't be surprised if the Titans have 2,000-yard rushers. I won't be surprised if Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears both have 1,000 yards on the season. I think the tricky part, honestly, will be getting DeAndre Hopkins back to 1,000 yards as well, because I think Calvin Ridley is going to be a focal point of this offense. I think he's going to get there, and I think it's going to be borderline with DeAndre Hopkins, and this offense is going to spread the ball around. So let's put it that way. Let's frame the question like that. Who do you think is the most likely, and you can rank them if you want to, if you've got multiple, most likely to get 1,000 yards on offense this season?
Oh, man. Just on offense in general, not out of wide receivers?
Yeah, let's go for wide receivers, running backs. Let's throw the tight ends in there too.
Man, I'm going to say Pollard, Ridley, let's go Spears.
There we go.
I don't know, Hopkins. I kind of feel like that's the end of my list.
Yeah, so we're kind of on the same page with that. We're good there. All right, that's going to do it. Thank you guys.
Nick Westbrook-Akine gets 2K.
Nick Westbrook-Akine is going to be the guy that gets 10 touchdowns in this offense, but has like 200 yards on the season or something like that. I don't know. Thank you guys for writing in and helping us out here, as life has been a little busy the past couple of days. Didn't have a concrete show agenda written out like I usually do, but we did it. And I'm ready for some football, Owen. You got any plans for the game tomorrow night?
No, man. Just going to sit back and enjoy it. Football's back, baby.
As one does. As one does. Well, thank you guys for tuning in for another Unofficial Titans podcast. Reminder, go check out Memo's Mexican Kitchen in Mount Juliet, Tennessee, just a mile north of I-40 off the Mount Juliet exit. Well worth the trip out there. Let them know Stoney and the Sobros Network sent you. You can check out all of our work at SobrosNetwork.com. Merch is up at SobrosShop.com. You can catch all of my Titans film work and my coverage of the NFL Draft on Stacking the Inbox. Just put a film review of Amani Hooker up there today because the haters have been gaslighting me into thinking Amani Hooker is not good. So I had to review the tape for myself. And you can check out my conclusion, what I arrived to after watching a little bit of Amani Hooker tape this week on StackingTheInbox.com. He is outspoken Owen Reed. I am Big Natural Stoney Keeley. And until next time, you stay classy, Titans fans.